Um, and we're going to go ahead and get started with public comments first. So do we have someone on the line now?
We do. So I know Albert emailed me ahead of time, so we'll bring him into the meeting, and then if there's anyone else in attendance, you can just raise your hand on Zoom, and we will go to you next. But I'll get Albert in here.
Good morning, everyone. It has been maybe 6 months since my last confession. I'm Jewish, so it doesn't really ring true for me. But anyway, hello. Good morning, everyone. Happy summer. I'm just back from the Oregon Country Fair, and even though I've been back for 3 days, my head is still a bit scrambled. But I did get a chance to sit in on the recent Shade Equity Coalition meeting and learned from Friends of Trees that you all are working together and that Friends of Trees will be planting trees in Portland again this fall, winter. So far, what I know is that the goal is 300 trees. And I want to put in a plug. Well, first of all, I just want to say yay. For any of you who have heard me ramble at these meetings in the past, you know that this has been a desire of mine and our group. We Keep Trees Standing for many years to get Friends of Trees back working, planting trees in Portland. So yay to that. Opening champagne, hurrah. If you hear something other than joy in my voice, that is only because my thought is that really urban forestry and all of our groups could really use sort of more joy at this time. So if there's any way to up the number of trees and up the number of planting that's happening this fall and winter to something more like 10 times that number of trees, I really think it would help the urban forestry and Friends of Trees and really our canopy, of course, but also just the general sense in the city of, things not happening, things not working, life could be better, where, Portland recovery, etc. So I just want to put a plug in for really thinking about that number. And, I've noticed in the last 5 years, plenty of street trees that have died in that period. And, I'm sure we could all rally to figure out spots where another 5,000 trees could go in all around Portland. And this would do a huge, I think this would really help urban forestry's reputation. I think it would really help our climate. I think it would really help, etc. One last thing, I really think I'm really saddened by what's been happening recently towards urban forestry. I did not play any part in that, although maybe I did, and I'm unknowingly, but I'm always about the issues, not about the personalities. And so if I ever talk to media, I want you to know that that is what I am focused on. And I'll just close by saying urban forestry could really use more communications out to the community. And if you don't have a communications director or two, or a few people working on this, I highly recommend that you get on board and start driving the narrative more. And that's something that I'm talking with our group Shade Equity Coalition about as well. And finally, I'll just say, I think it's time for us to all meet together as a group. We've got something like 40 people in the Shade Equity Coalition who all care about trees. You all care about trees. And we ought to be talking more closely together. I know Bruce is part of the coalition, so he's, I'm sure, keeping track and sharing our message, but I feel like it's not really, we're not taking advantage of all the power that's sort of in the room. So that's it. Thank you all for your work. Thanks for showing up every day and keeping our canopy growing and going. And I know it's a slog, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming and thanks for your comments. Any comments from urban forestry or elsewhere?
Yeah. I can fill in a little bit, maybe Megan. Thanks for the comments, Albert, and being here. And if you are planning to stay for the meeting, you might hear some relevant updates in the city forester's report to some things you talked about. This season, there will be around 4,000 trees getting planted. And we are thrilled to be working with Friends of Trees on that. And there's a multiple year contract with them. And that is a beginning number that Friends of Trees will be planting, and that was agreed on with them. We expect to see that ramp up in the future as capacities allow. And I believe Friends of Trees has been planting in Portland ongoing for a while now, although in different volumes, because I walk past some of those new plantings right in my neighborhood.
Great. And as you heard, Director Schmansky may or may not make it. And if she does, it will be later, so we'll kind of be flexible about what's happening to meet her schedule. But why don't we just go to meeting minutes? Folks have a chance to look at those and any requests for changes? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
What month are we on? And I wasn't aware there were any sent, but that could have been an oversight in my stupor.
Separately,
Yeah.
but not attached in the
It was-
meeting.
It was the
Documents.
last 2 months, so it was May and June that were attached to the information that went out.
Okay, thank you.
We're getting caught up a bit.
Well, in the interest of time, even though I haven't read them, I recommend that we approve the minutes that were submitted.
I can second.
All in favor? Okay, any noes? Any abstentions? Great, thanks, Darlene. Very good, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to the city forester's report, and we may break if we need to, if, yeah, Director Schmancy, and then we'll continue, so.
Thank you, Chair Feldstein. Good morning, commissioners. And as always, it's great to see you. Thank you for the time you spend on commission work and the advice you provide on the city's tree policies. And I and our team, and I know many other people, really value your time and effort. I have for you today topics. Probably take a break about midway for any quick questions. And we'll try to keep an eye on the time. I have a lot of time today, so I'm glad to use it. First up, gee, it's been hot. Everyone's noticed that, so it is timely for me to speak briefly about summer tree care, and that especially during the excessively hot and dry periods, which has really been extensive this year, it's day after day. Brought about by the climate crisis. Watering trees is really important, as is mulching, especially for newly planted trees. They've undergone a lot of change and shock by being moved and planted somewhere new. And that we're talking about deep, slow watering, at least 15 gallons per week. It's pretty hard to overwater new trees in the summer in our climate, so by all means, more is better. And that's for at least the first 3 years, and in some cases, it needs to be more than that. That's our practice in urban forestry, and it has changed over time, just in the past few years because of the change in climate. We used to say 2 years. And it's also appropriate in abnormally hot and dry weather to water mature trees, not newly planted trees. Same, large volumes of water that are slowly watered and make sure the water is infiltrating. Why do I tell you this? Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't as the urban forestry leader. And also it could be something you share with your networks. I believe yesterday we put out some press releases around summer tree care that included this type of information. And it'll be on social media by our service areas communications team, so we'll be able to use that as well. Moving on to another topic, another timely reminder is about emerald ash borer. Now is the time that the adult beetles are emerging from infected trees. We have a web page set up that links to many other resources, including at the state level, to help folks identify what emerald ash borer signs look like. They have a particular relatively small D-shaped hole when they emerge from trees. Urban Forestry's inoculation of ash trees that are large enough to be inoculated has already begun for this season. It began about a month ago and has been going on for a few years now. Please be on the lookout for potential EAB infestations and report them. I will put, after I'm done talking, a link in the chat for y'all to use that has reporting information on it. And we have this season received 2 potential infestation reports that the state is looking at right now that are within the city limits. Also, the EAB response plan for Portland is online. At the time to take a look at that, I would recommend it. We have a communications plan also that we are implementing now. Once there is a confirmed case in the city, our plan calls for different actions on a different timeline. So we are very interested in hearing what those possible detections are going to be, if they're confirmed or not. My next item is letting you know about a heritage tree situation. Heritage tree number 21, a Gravenstein apple on private property at 5003 Southeast 34th Avenue was approved for emergency removal on June 4th. That tree had experienced catastrophic large limb, scaffold limb failure that resulted in safety issues that couldn't otherwise be resolved. So as you may recall, removals that are non-emergency come for consideration to the commission. Those that are deemed an emergency situation that can't wait that amount of time, usually because of safety, there are provisions in Title 11 for the city forester to approve the removal. So we've done that with the property owner. I'll do one more and then take a pause. Next is budget. I want to update you on the changes to urban forestry resulting from the council approved budget for this fiscal year and ongoing. That includes the elimination of 10 of the 37 permitting and regulation positions and moving that program to the Portland Permitting and Development Bureau effective October 1st. So where we're at now with that is the people who are impacted by the position reductions have been made aware, and they may be out on leave approved by the city between now and when those positions officially end, which is September 2nd. The city has worked with all of the folks who are being laid off across all the city bureaus to try to provide some transition time and to communicate early. And there are also some other options the city has for folks that can be brought to bear, such as a reemployment program. I won't go into details with you all, but the city is trying to really help out folks who are losing their jobs to no fault of their own. And we have some of those in our permitting and regulation team. There will be impacts of this change to the rest of urban forestry and our PSEF funded programs like street tree maintenance. Right now, we staff are trying to identify the implications of the change on all of urban forestry, including the PSEF funded programs. However, these changes happened relatively recently, and the current focus is on specific budget implications and arranging budgets accurately for the move to Portland Permitting and Development and to inform next steps. So there are some challenges around how the amendments were made at council and unclarity that the city budget office is working on with our bureau and also PP&D to figure out what's the right money, where does it need to be, how does it get moved. Once that has been addressed, which we hope will be soon, we'll be able to work more on what are the other implications and the steps we need to take to try to ensure a really smooth transition and continue services as much as we can. Also, if Acting Director Schmansky comes, you could hear more about this, but yesterday, council voted unanimously to put a new parks levy on the ballot in the fall. And you will receive communications as forestry commissioners about that in the near future. I'll take a break there. I have there are 4 more items after this, but if you have any questions or comments on the first items, please let me know. Yes.
Yeah, it's just about the budget.
Yeah.
So 10 positions are being laid off and that department is moving to a different bureau.
That's right.
How many FTEs moving to the fixed bureau?
Good question, and it is complex. And this actually had to be figured out, so we just determined that within the past 2 weeks. 27 positions will move to Portland Permitting and Development as of October. The 10 positions that were reduced, several of those were vacant. That is because they were newly funded positions through PSF Tree Protection and Care. So that initiative, Tree Protection and Care, included improving and expanding our work on tree protection, for example, and that meant adding positions to our regulatory team. So those were eliminated, as well as a few occupied positions.
Commissioner Nelson.
I have a question regarding the planting of ash trees in Portland and emerald ash borer. Is it legal for as part of new development for there to be ash trees planted at a new development?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Commissioner Nelson. Ash have not been on approved planting lists and are not approved in permits. They've been on the list, not on the list for some time, and they are not approved for planting in regulated situations. So the answer is no, they shouldn't be happening. Go ahead. Enforcement is the next thing, right? If a permit has been issued and it says you can choose from off of this list, if folks are planting things that should not be planted and y'all are seeing that, that would be appropriate to bring to trees at, and it can be followed up on.
Does that exclude affordable housing, which is exempt from some of the tree code? Because that's what this housing was near me. It supposedly is affordable housing, but they planted a number of Oregon ash in the landscape, not as street trees, but in the landscape.
Those that are exempt from regulations, we cannot determine we can't restrict what they plant.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
This is also a different thing. Private property permits don't regulate the species for planting.
Planting, there are no regulations for planting trees on private property aside from development associated situations. So
It
it
specifically says ash trees.
no, the planting trees on private property is not regulated.
Yeah.
So there's no engagement with urban forestry. Folks can plant what they want. Of course, we've tried to do outreach around emerald ash borer and the need to not plant ash.
Mhm.
And there could always be more of that.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm hearing from Commissioner Nelson is in street trees, it's not approved. You may not do that.
That's correct.
Anything on private property relating to even a permit, even if it is a regulated tree, you should plant this because you removed another tree. There's no limitations on that.
That's correct, unless it's a private property development situation.
Okay, it's not important.
Okay, so it sounds like in this case, I should report them for planting as part of their new development on a affordable housing project, native ash trees on private property.
Are you thinking that's not regulated,
Correct.
Commissioner Clapp?
I'm thinking that.
I think Commissioner Nelson report it and we will find out. I think Commissioner Clapp is correct. This is not urban forestry's purview anymore. It's PP&Ds.
Right.
What occurs on private property, and that species selection may not be regulated even in private property development situations, so they can plant
Okay.
the species they like.
Okay, thank you.
But Bruce,
Yeah,
you might want to just talk to the owner, an operator of the affordable housing, because they really care about cost and maintenance costs long term.
mhm.
You might just say, hey, you're gonna have to switch these out eventually.
Great
They
point.
might not be aware of the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Good call.
And while they're young and new, it's a lot less expensive to do that work or feasible.
So much easier to tip them over.
Commissioner Vandemark? Waiting patiently.
All good. My question, and Jen, I apologize if you have shared this at some point and my brain did not retain it, but when we're talking about the positions that are going to move, can you just give clarity? I mean, as someone that engages with permitting to do tree planting, I'm just like curious, kind of like how the funneling and now who is going to be positioned there and maybe who that interacts with that is going to stay within urban forestry. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I'm just trying to kind of understand who's going to be where that's kind of worked in that the
Absolutely.
permitting realm.
Absolutely, and that's a great question, Commissioner Vandermark. So the permitting and regulation team, so this is all gonna be moving to PP&D starting in October. That consists of our trees single point of contact, trees at 823 Tree, those folks, everything they do, you all know them well, I think. Our non-development regulation team. This, for example, is part of the appeal today. These are the folks that implement all of the Title 11 regulations on non-development situations. So that would be in parks, on streets, and in private property. It also includes our capital and major projects team. So these are the folks who implement the Title 11 conditions and regulations in property development situations that are not private property. So this would be city development, new street, park renovations, Bureau of Environmental Services, pump station work, these sorts of things. And then the fourth and final of those is our code compliance team. These are the folks who receive and receive complaints about compliance concerns, such as perhaps a dangerous tree on private property that's threatening the public right of way. It's their responsibility to address those, and also to follow up on permit conditions to see that they have been met in some cases. That has been incomplete. We have focused primarily on replanting requirements. If a tree was permitted for removal, there is often a condition to plant one or more trees back, and this team would follow up to see if that's so. So those are the four groups, and they will all be moving to PP&D in reduced form.
We're gonna take a quick break now. We have Acting Director Schmensky here. So let's continue with the second half of the City Foresters report and any questions I see Commissioner Nilsson has. I have a couple questions as well.
I'm happy to,
We'll come back.
I'm here till 10:30 unless you prefer
You're-
differently, so
you're
I'm happy
okay?
for this to keep
Going
going.
to
Yeah,
continue?
plug me in
Okay.
wherever.
Okay.
I'll say in my defense, I go where my calendar tells me, and it's not on my calendar. I'm so sorry.
Oh, uh-oh. Okay, well then, Commissioner Nelson was next. You good? Okay, yeah. I had a quick question and that was about, so the 37 people before the cut, what percent of urban forestry FTE is that approximately?
Roughly a third.
About a third.
We have four
Okay.
work groups. One of them is really small. It's me, Brian, and Belinda. And then the other, it's permitting and regulation is about a third of our team. And our work
Uh-huh.
operations is about a third, and science outreach and planting is about a third. Okay, I'm gonna
Finish,
move
yes,
ahead.
please.
So I'm gonna switch over to some good news. Urban Forestry's updated tree regulation fee schedule took effect on July 1st. Thank you all for all your work over the years on that. With that, many of the permit application fees have been entirely eliminated, others have been reduced. Our implementation's been really smooth, thanks to the staff who worked on developing this and getting it up and running by the date. And reminder that being able to remove the fees is thanks to PSEP funds replacing that revenue. we've known, and you all know, that having to pay an application fee can be a significant barrier and burden to property owners getting good tree care, wanting to pay for trees, and complying with the city's regulations. So we've been looking forward to it for some time. We're excited and hope it's helpful. My next item is in May, way back then, you may recall, I provided a detailed update on the PSEF funded new services being delivered by Urban Forestry. And I can now add to that, that our lead staff for the city's first ever private property tree care support program has started work. Also, the lead position for the first ever street tree maintenance program started today. And we're in the final selection stages for the first ever, Albert's gone, but Urban Forestry Education Communications lead position. We're really excited about those developments. And pilot program development for both street tree maintenance and private property tree care are in the works. So we're developing the overall programs and working right now on some small pilot versions so that we can test things out and learn to inform the larger programs. Second to last for you, tour. We've talked about doing a tour for a while of development and trees. And we're hoping to make that happen later this summer, which would be like next month at this point, or in the fall. And my question to y'all today, it'd be great to kind of get a straw poll on this. We're thinking that we might best do that tour in addition to a regular commission meeting because of all of the topics that y'all are looking at these days. It doesn't need to be that way. And I really respect and appreciate that you are volunteers who have lives outside of this and want to respect your time. So I wondered what your sense is, your availability or receptivity to hypothetically having in effect 2 meetings in 1 month, sometime in the next few months, one of those being the field tour. Maybe the easiest way to do it is
I saw, that's
yes,
pretty
so-
easy.
yeah, if that works for you, yeah, I was trying to think, no or yes, which is the thumbs up. If that can work for you hypothetically, could you indicate yes?
Just clarification,
Yeah.
are you asking for like a regular like 2-hour meeting and then on the same day do a tour afterwards?
Good question. No,
Okay.
it would be different days.
Different days. Okay.
Yeah. And the tour would, I'm gonna guess, would be at least 2 hours. And there'd be travel time to and from that y'all would have to think about as well. Yeah. Commissioner Sanchez, yes.
Can you briefly explain what a tour
Yeah.
is? I feel like what
Yeah.
what's the, are we going like construction site type of thing?
Yeah, this conversation may precede you, so
Yeah,
thanks for bringing that up.
I'm
We've talked for a while about wanting to go out in the field and see instances of successful property development with tree preservation and even planting. And so there are many of these in the city and they can be really informative. So the idea was we would get some of those sites together, bring y'all around, we could all talk about them and see them. Vandermark?
Well, and if I could suggest a request, and I do this in my work, I don't ever call them this because people think they're boring, but I like to do trees and infrastructure walks so people can actually have an opportunity to understand some of the challenges that we're facing. So I'm sure any of your staff could do that, but I'd be happy to help contribute that because I think it's really helpful for that. And then I think in terms of doing it twice in a month, I would say, of course, as long as the dates work.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks for the comment. Commissioner Van Bark, are you saying do trees and infrastructure instead of trees and development? We were thinking that we would focus on that and can do other things, of course, at other times.
Yeah, I think just if we're walking around and looking, I think it's just helpful, right? I think there's a lot of considerations that folks maybe don't think about that we do, like high voltage power lines, the size of it, like the sidewalk,
Okay.
the curb's no sidewalk, right? The proximity to a house, et cetera. Like those things that we have to stare at all the time. I think it would just be valuable to point out while in transit.
Okay, so like take the opportunities as we walk past them. Understood. Thank you very much.
Any objections to doing meetings in one of the months for this? mean, obviously the schedule has to work out for folks, but it sounds
course.
like everyone's really interested in this, so
Great.
want to make it work.
Thank you all very much for that. And our last item in the city forester's report is an update on the Portland Urban Forest Plan, which Brian will give.
Yeah, all right, so we are moving through the process of recommendation by the Urban Forestry Commission and adoption by council. So we are on the agenda of the City Council's Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee meeting on July 24th, so next Thursday. That's sort of a temperature check opportunity. We'll be presenting the public draft of the plan. Obviously, we've had significant comments from the public, from city staff and the Forestry Commission that'll be incorporated into the next version. But this is a chance to really get a sense of is the plan meeting the expectations of that committee, and a chance for them to give us some initial feedback so that we can incorporate that guidance into the next version. Following that meeting, the updated plan will come to the Forestry Commission at your August meeting. The UFC is the recommending body of the plan to City Council. So you'll have a new version to review, along with a sort of memo of what's changed between the two versions. Nothing terribly substantive has changes. It's more stylistic, ways we're talking about things. Probably a few updates related to the move of the permitting and regulation team to PP&D, since there are some action items associated with that group. So confirming that PP&D is able to be responsive to those action items. But following the vote of the Urban Forestry Commission, it'll go back to City Council. So we have a committee meeting scheduled for September 11th. And then if the committee approves the plan, we'll move on to full council later that month. So definitely down to the home stretch. Appreciate all the incredible work the commission has done on this plan. I think it's in great shape. I think it's a really exciting vision and next steps for how we manage the urban forest. So thank you to all, and there'll definitely be some potential roles for the Urban Forestry Commission as maybe a representative speaking to the plan at council, so we can have some conversations about that as well.
Thank you, Brian. It is also possible that the council committee meeting on Thursday, there will be opportunity for folks to testify, to sign up and give comment. We'll know that Monday when the council agenda comes out. So we will make sure you all have that link to the agenda and can see that, but it's something to think about.
Would that be Thursday, the 24th?
Correct.
Yes.
This month?
Yeah.
In the morning.
Yeah, I think it's 9:30.
9:30.
Like to just make a comment. I came at the end of the plan, but I read through it. It's, you know, I compliment the hard work that everyone's put into putting it together. It's really well executed.
Thanks.
It's very thorough.
Yeah, thanks.
Is it
Thank you.
clear?
This group right here has had a lot to do with that. So thank you, Commissioner. We're done.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
any questions? Thoughts? Okay, turn it over then to Director Schmansky to give us a leadership transition update and anything else that I think it's worth talking about.
Oh, where to begin? I can give an update, including since this agenda was put together, which is fresh as of yesterday. Two things happened yesterday. The first is it was announced that it would be Parks Director Adina Long's last day with the city. Mike Jordan, our administrator, who had asked me to serve as acting director for the Bureau while she was out, asked if I would stay in an interim role to get through the November levy election, figure out what size bureau it's gonna be going forward, and then do a national recruitment for a permanent director. I said yes, with great, there's so many words. Excitement is one of them, and gratitude. I suspect that goes into late winter, that recruitment process, and that there will be a permanent director early spring. That's a long way out to be fixing a date, but that's my sense of about how long that will take. I am delighted to be able to spend more time with the team and the Bureau and the work. The road is not easy, but it's also not that complicated in a lot of ways. So I'm really gratified by the opportunity to stay and keep supporting for these next months. The other thing that happened today is yesterday is council took up and approved a resolution to refer a parks levy to the November ballot. And it was a really wonderful moment in council chambers. And I was telling someone this morning, I don't know that I've seen a happier council member than the council president when she voted yesterday. She didn't offer remarks, she just said yes when she voted, but her smile was like leaping out of her face. And it was really cool to see that moment for her and for them, and to think about what it represents and what the experience of all of them championing the levy is gonna do for the Bureau and for kind of all the work that's ahead that council and the bureaucracy need to do together. So that was really, really terrific. They landed on a rate that sustains current service levels over the next 5 years, carves out a small but mighty increment for capital maintenance work, high impact bathroom, playground, small pool repairs. And they've expressly included $1 million worth of space in that rate to focus on partnerships. There's been a lot of conversation about that. A lot of conversation, including really good opportunities to share with them things that are working well in the Bureau and hear from them places they'd like the Bureau to grow in partnerships. So that road feels pretty clear. And you know, campaign starts today. So the role of the city staff is really different starting now. And it really becomes an externally had conversation among people who are interested. So that was a big day. And then of course, I should have said 3 big things happened yesterday. In the evening, council confirmed 6 new Parks Board members who are awesome. And that was really cool to see. And they were very complimentary of the recruitment process, which surprised me, not because it wasn't a great process, but it was wonderful to hear compliments to the work and to Michelle Tran, who many of you probably know. 2 things operationally. One of them, Jen was talking about, the transition of the permitting and regulation team is pretty complex and moving pretty quickly. Administrator Jordan is paying a lot of attention, as is the chain of command down from him into both bureaus. That's a really good thing. It's necessary, I think, to get that done on time and successfully. So there will be a lot of focus on that over the next few months. And then more broadly, the budget landed, but it landed with a lot of asterisks and a lot of questions about what did they mean when they said that? What did they mean to happen when they did that? Do those numbers add up? So that's still being untangled and reconciled by the people who are equipped to do that. And very soon, we should have a pretty clear picture of what it all adds up to. And we've got a lot of implementing to do. It was great to see council embrace the maintenance side of the house in the way that they did and work hard to put money back into that. So that that's great. We're figuring out how to do that. And I guess in the background and on top of all of that, it's summer and it's high season and everything is extremely lively and busy out there. So there's a lot going on.
Questions, thoughts?
Did I miss anything that's on your mind? Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Commissioner Nelson?
Does city council have any say in the selection of the new parks director? Is that strictly up to the city administrator?
That reporting chain goes up through the DCA, deputy administrator, administrator, and mayor. So formally, no. In other ways, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Question. So originally Parks was saying they needed a doubling of the levy
Right.
to maintain services, and something lesser has now been approved. So can you talk about what,
The difference.
how do we resolve that, or
Yep.
the
The difference is that Bureau, for all the money that was restored through the budget process, did end up taking a lot of cuts. So the Bureau is a little bit smaller now, and the rate needed to maintain it is lower.
I see.
That mostly, incidentally, that mostly came out of the central services that support service delivery. A fair amount came from urban forestry. That makes things a little less stable because the engine at your core has a little less horsepower. But they were able to protect most of the direct services through that.
Just a follow-up on that, so the last levy funds are coming to an end. And then this new levy potentially come into effect next year. And the sort of like in between the first and the second, there's unknowns of like, okay, like what are you thinking on the planning for like if the levy passes or not passes with staff and budget size and if the levy doesn't pass, we're gonna see even more significant cuts in urban forestry, or is there like a plan for like to backfill some of those positions in a different way? Or
Speak generally better than about urban forestry specifically, but give it a try. November is much better than May because it's before you've really built your budget. So you know whether a levy has passed or not by the time you're putting your proposed budget forward at the end of January. That goes to Mike Jordan now. Current budget was built to start ramping out of the levy. If the levy passes, we don't need to keep doing that. So some of the cuts that were taken will not be taken. There's a financial aspect to your question and a budget planning aspect. On the financial side, it's very simple. You borrow from yourself until funds appear because you know they're on the way. On the budget planning side, the impact of no levy financially is known. So the Bureau budget folks are very clear about the dollar amount that would need to be cut if there is no levy. Actually, how to do that is not at all known because it's a question of council priorities. And there's an element of it also, which is if a levy does not pass in November, does council want to try again in May? And if they want to try again in May, at what rate? And in the meantime, what assumptions do they want reflected in the budget process? I don't have answers to any of that. How it applies to urban forestry is even less clear to me because your funding is complex.
More complex than ever.
Every day, more complex. Certainly the PSEF work is kind of cordoned off and supported differently. And then as goes general fund, levy blend, so goes urban forestry as part of it. Yeah, and then beyond that, it's just a question of mayor administrator guidance as far as how to order and stack things. That's not very satisfying. I can feel that.
but it makes sense.
That's what I have.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Vandermark?
Thank you for your time. I mean, my question is also related to budget, but I think it's a bit more long-term and you certainly may not have the answer, but I think in our current budget environment, right, locally, I think Metro is being impacted, our county governments are being impacted, our city governments are being impacted, and there's less federal dollars available. So, and all of this is happening at a time where climate change is increasing, right? So we're seeing deregulation around the environment and increased dollars. So I'm just curious if there are long-term concerns about funding for both parks broadly, but also urban forestry specifically. And I don't know if you know how to answer that, but I think I'm clearly thinking about that and how we're going to continue to fund these things at a time that we are defunding them, unfortunately, because of tight budget environments.
Yeah. Well, the large answer, the large long-term answer probably is about economic stability of the region and tax reform at the state, which are out of the control of the Parks Bureau, except to the degree that the park system and its health contributes to the overall health of the city and the region. Urban forestry is somewhat uniquely situated, more so by the day, with the PSEF resources, which, you know, how did we get to this point? Don't ask me, but they're looking pretty good and pretty stable compared to general fund and other revenue sources right now. So I think that's in the plus column for the future of that work. And I don't think that work becomes less valued generally or valued as a contributor to climate resilience. I think it becomes more so and more competitive and attractive for those investments through PSEF. And I know that folks, it's a 5-year funding cycle, but I've never heard anybody say it's a 5-year program. So I feel really confident about that. General fund, I also feel more confident about. I think we are on, it's a lagging indicator, but I do think we're gonna see it in a much healthier place a couple of years from now. And then the levy conversation has also really spurred a lot of talk about financial stability for the Parks Bureau and the Parks system at that altitude. And it's so encouraging to hear council want to understand that and want to talk about it and want to make commitments. Yesterday, they amended their resolution to put a deadline for a financial sustainability plan for the Parks Bureau. Like, that's so cool. So that means that we are going to be talking about that both on the operating side and on the capital side, where bless them, they're also incredibly interested and committed to making progress with PBOT and parks and all the deferred maintenance. So I've worked here a long time now. I haven't seen that kind of concentrated, focused energy on that ever. And I don't see anything getting in the way of it in the next couple of years. I just see continued forward motion.
That's great. Commissioner Nelson?
This is kind of a follow-up to that. I think it really is imperative that I think Sustainable's Futures Group did a great disservice to parks in not coming out with a some sort of viable plan to deal with the 700 million in maintenance. I mean, I know it's a very difficult issue, and I've heard their talks on why they can't do this or that, but we got to figure out a way to deal with it. And if this city council wants to push that, that's great. But I would hope that you in your role as interim parks director and the new parks director really grab hold of that and make it a priority, because it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So I hope I can see a change in that in my lifetime.
Well, the wind is at our back. Councilor Novick said something interesting last night, had a council resolution about, in the same vein, sustainable funding for PBOT, directing PBOT to come back with a plan. And he said, wait a minute, these are political questions. There's only so much opining and analysis and action they can really do on that side of things. And it's us who need to do that past a certain point. So I agree with you completely that the bureau side of the house and the elected side of the house need to keep pace with each other, and they need to stay connected so that the need is known, the options are known, the political people are doing the political side of the thinking and planning, and then strategy comes out of it. Absent either of those, it's not going to go. But I hear you that the organization, without that leadership attention and partnership, it also doesn't go anywhere.
I have a quick question. So, and it's kind of a big political question, and that is, I've always wondered, and maybe even more now, whether it's in the best interests of our canopy to have urban forestry in Portland Parks and Rec. Because there's some overlap, but not entirely. It's really our whole canopy that urban forestry does, and so if we're continuing to do 5-year levies to run Portland Parks and Rec, which is, in my view, not the right long-term strategy. I know there's all political and all kinds of legal barriers to getting to probably what we want in terms of a parks district and long-term funding, but wondering, you've been around in politics a really long time, wondering if you have any opinion on that or thoughts on how to even figure it out.
Such an interesting point. Yeah, levies are hard, particularly if every 5 years you're not sure whether you're gonna do one. If you've got a, 50-year levy plan, that's a little different. But this is really challenging to plan around and manage around. When we're doing this government transition, building this new management structure, service areas and administrator, et cetera, we talked a lot about natural resources, service delivery, and how we were gonna do that as a city. Maybe as more than a collection of parts, how could we be more than the sum of these things? What would it look like to really declare an intention and then build a structure to deliver that intention? We're still moving in that direction. It would not surprise me if a natural resources unit appeared somewhere. And if it had some connection to the tree stuff, I'm not presaging urban forestry moving. Just that conversation is continuing, and I think that will be a question. Yeah, it's so interesting, it's a park system and then there's the canopy.
Yeah.
So to ask the levy to support the canopy is asking a lot of the levy. And kind of not at cross purposes with supporting the park system, but I don't know that people are understanding that it is doing all of those things.
Right.
More to come.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, any other questions or thoughts?
That question had a lot of parts in it. I feel sort of fizzing around in my brain.
I have a question. You seem very optimistic. I do not share your optimism right now, based on all the transitions that are happening and the change of urban forestry regulation staff to their current position. I don't feel optimistic that that's gonna work out well, and it feels to me that the council is really going back and forth with wanting to essentially cut and otherwise just take small bits and parts off of the regulation while still acting as if they are in full support of the levy and urban forestry and all these other things. It seems like they're trying to talk out of both sides of their mouth. And it feels to me with the upcoming reassessment of Title 11 that we're in a very precariously bad situation. So I like your optimism, but I'm curious if you can tell me how you are still optimistic seeing what we've just gone through, and how losing the regulatory body, which is the enforcement body of urban forestry, how are we now going to continue to work as one city working together when, man, we've done a really bad job of that so far, and now the thing that was working well together has been split up. So I just could you speak to that a bit?
Yeah. I think that's very reasonable, what you just said. It's very understandable that you'd be looking at the picture, seeing that and feeling that. I went quickly over the permitting and regulation program move when I was talking, because I saw that it was 5 minutes. Council's making a lot of really big decisions with very little information, because there are 12 of them who are able to inject energy into conversations and push them. And a couple of times they've made decisions and then said, oh my gosh, I wish I had done that differently. Children's levy was a great example. Kind of the example so far. I think that's happening in a lot of other smaller ways as well. Time may make this one of them for them when they see, because I barely understand that program. Every time you describe its parts, it's kind of the first time to me for all the times I've heard it. They don't know what they've done because they can't. And it may surprise them. There are part of why I'm optimistic, although what you just said, I feel that too. is that a lot of people who have hands on levers are paying attention and wanting it to be successful. So I think what I have faith in is that it will be the best it can be. Is that the best it should be? No. Is that good enough? You know, not my judgment to make, but maybe not. And the getting into the code is a pretty vulnerable thing to do in a pretty vulnerable moment. We've talked about that a lot. We have a meeting today to talk about what is the picture of urban forestry relative to the picture that some folks are seeing. And how do we bump out the frame? So that by the time, and my goal is so that by the time they get to that conversation about the code, they are really well grounded in the work that the program does, in the ways that it affects community, the ways it's valued. And they can contextualize the code as part of that. Because I feel, you didn't say this, but I feel pretty high centered on these one-off experiences people are having with it, and then that becomes the picture, but that isn't the picture. I feel optimistic when I think about the overwhelming percentage of things occurring in urban forestry being just completely like unqualified upside, right? And it's just about showing that to people in a way they can see and remember. So that is going to be really cool work ahead on the kind of storytelling communications side of things. But I understand what you just said. And I, like I said, to different degrees, I feel that way too, day to day.
Okay, final question. Commissioner Vandermark?
Well, and thank you, Casey, for that question and for that answer. I think maybe my final question would just be any suggestions for us to help shift that conversation around urban forestry. I think that unfortunately it feels like that we're experiencing a reactive environment. And in that reactivity, there's kind of some backlash to tree regulation. And I think, you know, we all understand that in order to protect our canopy, right, there's just mechanisms that need to be in place, but I feel like there's a lot of education that needs to happen, and I just want to understand any suggestions for the role that we could play in helping facilitate that amongst our new council.
Such a good question. I think, like you just said, time and connection is the answer. The more they see, the more they experience, the richer that understanding becomes and the better the discussion and decisions become as a result of it. I think, like you were talking about a tour, things like that can be so illuminating, and being out in the world and not, you know, in this space with them. So you may have a role in that. There also will be moments like next week where you can plug in with perspective. But even that is kind of in the established day-to-day business. And I think part of the trick here is like breaking out of that, like, wait a minute, ground truth, go out in the world, look at the work. So that, I mean, that's probably its own brainstorm worth having here, which I'd be happy to be part of or be part of supporting, implementing.
I want to thank you very much for taking on this leadership role in this difficult time, and, you know, look forward to working with you. Again, thanks for coming.
It's mutual. Thank you.
And yeah, I also want to just take a moment to thank Urban Forestry and acknowledge this is such a difficult time, and people, you know, really appreciate people coming to work and doing the best they can for the canopy.
Thanks. Thanks for accommodating me. I'm sorry I was late.
Thank you.
Sorry if I took more time than.
Oh, no, perfect. No,
Right,
I think you misread it. We just get 25 minutes.
I often get 5 minutes.
Not 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you all for your service. It was a dynamic time, and what you said is true, and part of the future is a function of what we do now here as a group together. More to come. Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna turn this over to Brian for the
next.
draft tree stock size administrative rule.
Yes. One. And just so we know, we do have a hard stop at 11 on this one. There's an appeal hearing starting at 11:05, and we expect that one to take longer than most appeals. So that's what's driving the sort of shortened meeting today. But I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right, there it is, great. So today I'm talking through a draft administrative rule that Urban Forestry has been working on. And just for anyone who's not familiar, so administrative rules are actions that the city can take through an administrative process as opposed to a council ordinance resolution process. So within code, which is adopted by council who sets policy, there are certain authorities that are delegated to the city administrator, and through the city administrator, bureau directors, city forester, city engineers, positions like that, allow for us to make some changes to certain parts of what's in code. And so that's sort of the structure of authority we're working through with this proposed administrative rule. So just a little bit of background of what process we're taking part in here. So this is looking at the requirements that Title 11 has when trees are planted. So Title 11 in code sets minimum size requirements for whatever trees are planted that are regulated by Title 11. So examples of that are any street tree that's planted is regulated by Title 11. A tree that's planted on private property outside of a development situation is not regulated. Any size tree can be planted there. We don't issue permits for that. Or in a situation where, say, a private property tree is removed and a permit is issued to remove that tree, a condition of that permit is that a new tree is planted. So in that case, that planting is regulated and these size requirements apply. So again, just give a little bit of framework of what we're talking about here. And just be clear, for this situation, when we talk about size, we're not talking about the species of the tree. We're not talking about a Douglas fir as opposed to a dogwood. We're talking about the size of the tree when it's planted. These requirements that are in Title 11, they apply to both non-development and development scenarios. And the size requirement varies based on the location of the tree, whether it's on site, such as private property, or on property that's owned or managed by the city, that's an on-site tree, as opposed to a street tree. And then importantly, and we'll get into more specifics of this is just the background. They also vary based on the development type. So a single family home versus an apartment building or an industrial commercial site, those sizes vary. So just a little bit of context for that. And so these are the requirements that are in code. And Jen can correct me because I'm not an expert on this part, but this is referred to for a broadleaf tree. The size requirement is by what they refer to as caliper size. So it's the diameter of the tree measured 6 inches above the ground. So that photo there, you can see that's a newly planted tree. It's a street tree, so assuming that's about 1.5, looks maybe a little bit larger than is required, but that's the kind of size that we talk about, a 1.5-inch caliper. For coniferous trees, in code, it is by height. So simply it's a 5-foot tall tree. So you can see in the table here what Title 11 requires. So for on-site trees, it's 1.5-inch caliper for broadleaf, 5 feet tall for coniferous trees. But when we get into street trees, you can see the variation that starts to occur when it comes to the caliper size for broadleaf. So for a single family home up to a fourplex, the street tree requirement is 1.5 inch, but then it increases from there. We've had Title 11 now for about 10 years, and we've identified a few issues with some of these size requirements, which is leading to the proposed administrative rule. Some of those are just the availability of some of these trees at nurseries, being able to get the species you're looking for at the size that's required by code. Some of those larger size trees, when you get to the 2-inch caliper, the 2.5-inch caliper, they're a little bit harder to plant. This photo is an example of Parks urban forestry crews planting these larger caliper size trees. Sometimes they require just more staff to do that work, or specialized equipment. And then also those different street tree requirements, they create some complexity. So if you imagine a urban forestry street tree planting program that's planting thousands of street trees every year with various contractors like Friends of Trees, like private companies, it's required to check the associated development type to know what size tree you're required to plant. So that creates some complexity, especially for maybe some newer contractors that we're bringing on board as part of our efforts to diversify the pool of contractors that we're using. So in response to that, we've developed a draft administrative rule which would make some changes to these required sizes. So the left side of the table shows the current requirements, and the right side shows proposal that's being made here. So for on-site trees, on particularly like private property situations, allowing for a 1/2-inch caliper broadleaf tree, and for coniferous trees to be 3 feet tall instead of 5. Part of what's driving this is the street tree environment is different than an on-site environment. If it's a street tree, there's people biking, there's cars, there's people walking, there's just a little more likelihood or chance of damage occurring. And so having a larger caliber tree that's a little more stature can really ensure that tree lasts longer. But less of a situation in someone's backyard. These smaller size trees do tend to establish better as well. So there's some benefits to going a little bit smaller for on site. And then for the street trees, we're maintaining that 1.5-inch caliper and the 5 foot tall for coniferous, but standardizing it. So allowing for that 1.5-inch to be planted in all these different situations, not varying. An important consideration here, this is in non-development only. So development, new construction, trees being planted, they will still follow the requirements in code. This is in non-development only. So a few benefits we see from this. One is simply that easier for Portlanders to purchase and plant trees of this size. So the folks that are dealing with these size requirements for the most part are individual property owners. A tree's moved in their yard, they have to replant. It can be a little bit challenging to find, transport, and plant those 1.5-inch caliper trees. This is a photo from our yard tree giveaway program, give you a sense of the smaller size trees that would be allowed. A lot easier to move and transport, a lot easier to plant on your own. And really importantly, this would allow for trees that we give away for free through our yard tree giveaway program to be used to meet those replanting requirements. So rather than going to a nursery, purchasing those trees, which for a 1.5-inch caliper can be $100, $150, they can come to our free tree events, get a tree themselves for free at no cost, and then plant it. So it does it makes it a little bit easier for Portlanders to be in compliance with code while still getting the outcomes that we're looking for. And again, as I stated earlier, it reduces the complexity for tree planting carpenters. They don't have to check the adjacent property development type to see, is it a fourplex, is it a multifamily, to see what kind of size tree they need to procure to be planting it. So we see a lot of benefits to this proposal. This is going through an internal draft phase right now. We're giving you notice and seeking your feedback at this sort of early phase. If this is to move forward, it would follow the city's administrative rulemaking process, which has a 30-day comment period where we make any changes based on feedback we're hearing. And then ultimately it's the city administrator who would adopt this. And we are looking for this right now. If you go onto the meeting page, you'll see a link to the draft rule. That this would sort of be a pilot period. We're thinking this would be for 3 years, sort of allow for Title 11 amendment project to happen. So maybe some of this, if it's going well, we're seeing positive benefits from it, could be included in that code amendment process. But it really allows for us to pilot these smaller sizes, continue with the monitoring that our program does for all of our tree planting, and get a sense of what the actual impact of this is. So that I'll stop sharing and happy to answer any questions. If you want to hear feedback on this, anything I can clarify.
Brian, sorry, this is a little on the spot, but I think you can do this. Could you speak to what our and Urban Forestry's internal review of this idea has been, who's been involved? And
Yeah, sure.
what the outcomes of that were?
Yep, so this originated with our tree planting program. They're the ones that originally requested this. We are scaling from a few thousand trees a year to 10,000 trees a year. And so with that, finding the available stock, finding contractors that are capable of doing this work, really creates some complexity there. So that was sort of the initial request was, hey, we think there's a lot of benefit to doing this. Part of it was driven too by, we've been giving away through our yard tree giveaway program, these smaller sized trees for years. I think there's probably about 10,000 trees out there at this point planted at that size of that program, and we've been monitoring them over that time period. And so we've seen really high successful establishment rates from those trees, and having individual property owners watering them and caring for them, seeing that that is leading to high establishment rates gave us a lot of confidence in moving this. From that, we spoke with all the different members of our forestry team, the permitting team, our tree maintenance operations. But then we've also been talking to some of our other bureau partners, especially bureau partners that have programmatic permits, like Bureau of Environmental Services has a programmatic permit. Bureau of Transportation is involved at times, getting feedback from them as well on how this could affect any activities that they're doing. So that's been the internal phase of this. And then now we're moving to the external phase, starting with the Urban Forestry Commission, and then the 30-day public comment period.
Thank you, Brian. I'll add to that for our monitoring program, which is extensive in regards to planting, survival rate across the board for all planting types is 95%, which is quite good compared to national rankings for that. 100% is almost impossible to achieve. And historically, the stock sizes that are in the current code have come from our arboricultural standards that are based on really 2, maybe 3, I'll say 3 principles. Recovering canopy quickly, concept that the larger the tree is that you plant, the quicker you get canopy back. It's still a long time to do that, I say, but that's one of the principles. Another is, as Brian mentioned, you'll notice the street tree stock sizes are generally larger and for more intense, perceived as intense property use types in right-of-way, even larger stock. That idea comes from a background of concern about vandalism and impacts, car doors, bikes, like Brian stated, and that a larger tree is more resilient. And then the third one has been historically what's available in nurseries. And those are the common sizes that have been produced, which is a feeding cycle. So I just wanted to give you that background, where those are coming from. And the key point that I want you to hear from us is that our own documented experience is that the smaller stock sizes can do well. And smaller stock often is biologically better equipped to make that change, being pulled out of the ground somewhere, plopped somewhere else. There's more adaptability when the trees are smaller, therefore younger size. And with the climate crisis, that in our experience may increasingly be the case. Again, there's a pilot for this, as we often do in urban forestry, to test things out before we go full level. Thanks, Brian.
And the last thing I'll note, we also did a peer city review. So we looked at what other cities require, talked to other cities. Eugene allows for fairly small. I think in some cases down to almost a half inch for street trees. Interestingly, referring to damage, college students who are out late at night tend to be a bit of a challenge for Eugene. So give you a sense of some of the abuse that street trees take.
Yeah. Commissioner Nelson?
Yeah, I wondered, is there, with the 1.5 inch requirement for street trees, is that when we're going for diversity with selection, is that some of the quote unusual trees, they're just not available in that size? I think. I mean, are you running into that issue? I mean, I don't want our street trees to merely reflect what's growing what we have at 1.5 inches, if there are other selections. And I've heard that has been an issue with Friends of Trees in the past. I don't know if it's still an issue, but I don't know if urban forestry runs in that also when you're trying to line up contractors.
Thanks for that question, Commissioner Nelson. And at the smaller stock sizes being allowed, larger can also be planted, right? That helps address that fact that yes, it is hard to get certain species. There are trends of popularity and nurseries produce what sells, which is that too is a self-feeding cycle. You know, maples are a great example in my experience. A lot of folks know what a maple leaf looks like. If they don't know any other tree they'd like a maple, it's the Canadian flag. That's my tree. What's the result of that? We have a lot of maples. So this should help. It will not solve that situation. That's a bigger project that we've talked a lot about, working with nurseries to try to promote more species availability in the sizes that we need. That is ongoing. Our planting team is already working on that, but there's a lot more to do.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Woodley next.
Yeah, well, and I'll share a question and a comment. So, I mean, I care about this issue deeply as someone that has to source trees in my work. So I'm curious if there has been anyone that has a critique of this, like any resistance to it or not. I do think just one layer that comes up is with nurseries, right? When they hit a certain stock size, if they don't sell, for example, they then up pot them, and that up potting can jump pretty significantly. You go from, maybe they have a 1 1/4, it doesn't sell. It also then shifts to about a 2.5. They're trying to grow it up even more. And one thing that in my professional work we consider is how heavy they are. And I can tell you, the heft of these is just really matters, and the equipment that you need for heavier trees. I mean, this is all really real, but also the cost. And so the cost to residents, and if we're asking general community members to shell out hundreds of dollars to get a tree, and it's very heavy and they don't have the experience, like it's just a lot. But I'm curious, Brian, has anyone said hard stop no? Has there been, I mean, from the health perspective, I mean, the trees do better, but anybody opposed?
It's a great question. And I should have mentioned earlier in our process, we also talked with Friends for the Trees, Megan specifically, as we were developing this. So obviously because of the experience they have procuring trees and planting with lots of different partners. So I want to give Megan credit for helping inform this as well. The only, I think, sort of, I wouldn't call it a hard stop, but on the development side, the PP&D did have a lot of concerns around, one, just the complexity of implementing it. It's just a different standard. And with all the transition happening at that bureau, I think there was some hesitancy. I think there was also a bit of support for the larger street tree size, even the 2.5 inch, when it's a development situation. In that case, the sort of complexity of different sizes doesn't really apply because it's a development happening on a single site, and that developer just knows I need to plant a 2.5 inch tree. A little bit easier to meet that requirement, fewer trees to purchase, and so procurement is less challenging. A slightly higher cost to plant is less of an issue, and it's a bit of a more complex environment for a tree to be planted. There's perhaps a new location, there's maybe street traffic that's occurring there that wasn't occurring before. So I think there's just a desire that it might be good to have a larger stature tree that really establishes itself as a new presence in the streetscape. That can maybe stand a little bit more abuse during that kind of change process. So that was what we heard from PP&D. But otherwise, I think we've mostly heard appreciation for allowing this flexibility on the size, and a lot of excitement, particularly on being able to use city tree planting programs like Yard Tree Giveaway to help Portlanders meet their Title 11 requirements. So I think that's something we've heard a lot of positive response on too.
It may, thank you, Brian, it may be that with the pilot, if that is successful, we ferret out any issues and get them successfully addressed, that PP&D will be more receptive. You know, they aren't arboriculture background folks in general. They come at it more from practice permitting. So I think I understand that they're concerned with that change. We might need to demonstrate that it is very workable. I wanted to respond to Commissioner Vandermark as well. Thank you for bringing up your comments and your question. And it made me think that we need to be really clear here that we're only talking about stock size in this administrative rule, planting stock size. We're not talking about quality of nursery stock. There are other standards that we require in those cases, and those are not changing, and they're not addressed at all in this. So like, for example, uppotting can often lead to detrimental root conditions, and those we would still catch given our current standards for accepting stock.
Well, and Jen, just can I clarify, if we allow smaller stock, then we also can have less issues with uppotting, correct? Like it's kind of like the counter. If we can plant those ones, then we're not necessarily ending up with trees that developers are purchasing or others are purchasing that have been uppotted so they can sell them, honestly, versus burn or dispose of them. So it's kind of like lowering the stock size also allows to can help counter the nursery stock issues.
Of course, and with smaller stock, we still encounter quality issues, and we have to manage for those because otherwise we're wasting that investment if that tree isn't successful. And the quality of the stock, the structure of the roots, the structure above soil are all really important to the success of that tree. So the point here is just those are separate things that aren't changing. We're really only talking about stock size.
I think I would be in support of this because I know it will make it easier for people to get trees and get more trees in the ground being smaller. I do have concerns over the size. I think there are some places that we should have the larger trees. So will this mean that, well, one, you will still be able to plant larger trees? So is it still possible that the city could say, great, we are gonna try and get these larger trees planted here on a case-by-case basis?
Oh, you're saying like, can the city require larger trees in certain situations?
Yeah, or this would leave the option open. You can always plant a bigger tree, right?
Code does currently allow for city forestry to require smaller or larger based on specific site conditions. So I think in that case that would be permitted on a case by case. This is more just lowering the sort of floor for where you're starting from.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for park plantings or plantings we're doing ourselves, we do that currently and we'll continue to do that.
Great.
Yeah.
It's difficult, I'm sure you understand, many of you, we try to make policies that are simpler and easily understood and implemented. And that means they're broad and they can't account for specificity. So what I personally like about this is we can continue to specify in certain situations that there needs to be a different size.
Great.
If the policy went the other way, it would be pretty onerous for people to try and meet. Have all these subcategories.
Well, second thing I'd like to add is that we should still push to get the city to take over all the planting of street trees in every possible situation, specifically in development, because this will allow developers a cheaper option, smaller tree. Inevitably, and I'm sorry, this is my opinion, if you're a developer listening to this is just the way my experience is, you're going to go for the cheapest tree. And cheap trees are not always good trees, and I don't mean the stock necessarily, I mean that the species is not the best and most appropriate thing as in the right tool for the job for that spot. Urban forestry taking over that role would be the proper decision, so no matter the size of the tree, it would be the best possible tool for the best, or for the place that we need it to be planted. So I just wanna reiterate that again and again and again, where that should be the primary goal that urban forestry moves towards in every regard.
Thank you, Commissioner Clapp. The way that works currently for street trees, just so y'all know, is permits are required for planting, and species is one of the criteria that must be permitted. And our code compliance team, which formed 2 years ago now for levy funds, that was one of their very first areas of implementation, is following up on those things. However, it hasn't gone to the level of species yet, so it is still challenging. Second thing I'll say to that is street tree maintenance program coming your way, pilot to come soon, which includes planting.
Great.
So, yay.
I also want this in development, I wanna be very clear.
I hear.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Jared had raised his.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner.
Yeah, I know we gotta stop here, a hard stop in a couple of minutes.
Mm.
2 quick comments. I think the way this was presented sounded more like it's easier for us humans to plant trees. I think it was the clarification you gave of like it's healthy for the trees and it's like more resilient. I think that's our primary focus, and I think that's the way it should be presented. And the other thing I'll comment on, like I know like smaller trees just take longer for the canopy to grow, so to benefit for community members, critters and everything, it just takes longer time. Like in East Portland, we're appreciative of all the new parks, but all the new parks come with new trees and it's hot. We can't have events out there. We can't participate, can't enjoy it. So just those 2 comments.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying that. I have a quick couple. I agree. That's really small. And so if we can get something bigger when possible, I definitely recommend it as much as possible, especially in the streetscape. I'm glad that that's being kept to that 1.5 at least, or recommended to be. Half inch, one thing, I love the yard and tree program. I have, my neighbors have participated and I've encouraged them to do it. I have trees from it. My biggest recommendation is better planting information for the folks and stakes. There's a lot of flimsy yard trees out there.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of doing this and trying to get some better established trees that can be, fitting in the long term. I walk throughout my neighborhood and I see like the same 5 oaks that are like falling apart. And I've talked to them. I say, hey, probably stake that up a little bit and still kind of flopping around. You know, when something is at least an inch or even 1.25 inches, it's gonna have a better structure to it. It's been established a little bit better. But I do applaud the utilizing the yard tree program, which seems like seems to be a surplus of those trees, which might be part of, I don't know, why there's extra trees, or maybe that's just an intention. I do seem to get a few emails extra that we have a lot of extra trees this year. So, and then I do, I don't know, with the development aspect of, one comment is that the planting strip for 3 foot, a small strip for a 2.5 inch tree is a significant challenge to find that tree. It's just those trees are slower growing, they're smaller, and to find a 2.5 inch like the stash.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a great point.
I found 2 of them this week that I've secured, and I've called like 10 nurseries.
That's a great
Thank you.
point. And it's a great example of the site conditions being a reason to allow exceptions in individual cases.
I've just found it specifically with this planting strip.
Yeah.
The other ones, great, you can get in Helm all day.
Yeah, that's a great
It all
point.
day, that's fine, but the small ones are the challenges. And I haven't found much griping from it with my people I've worked for, development wise, but it's definitely, those are the toughies. Those are fine.
Would you be open to our planting folks following up with you about the information that's provided to yard tree recipients?
Sure.
Great.
Yeah,
We'd
staking,
love
and
some
then
feedback.
more barriers so they don't get mowed. A 1/2 inch tree can look like a weed.
So we can't regulate those things on
But
private
that's just
property.
like, that's part of it.
And that was something we
Education.
heard too, is
Yeah.
like, can they sustain typical landscaping,
Mhm.
things like that, yeah. for sure.
Mainly
Thank you.
because a lot of folks are motivated to plant a tree for free as opposed to someone that is being told they have to plant a tree after they had to get a permit to remove a tree.
Yeah,
So their motivations might be different.
100%. Yeah, those are great.
So we can take this up again.
Of
It
course,
sounds like
yeah.
a lot of
Thank you.
interest in this, but I'm gonna adjourn the regular Urban Forestry Commission meeting. And we'll have a break until 11:05, as people need for the appeals hearing. So folks who are gonna remain for that, please do and do what you need to do.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And again, just a reminder, the appeals board is Adrian, Darrelly, Bruce, and Casey. Leah's on as well, but it's not here today.
It's a public meeting, correct? So anyone can stay who wants to stay.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
Does this keep?
I was gonna say, can you pause the recording and then just restart it for the hearing, just so we have different files for each? That's great.